Be able to see, but without a heart, you cannot feel.
What's up, everybody? This is Siosi Samuels, and you are tuning in to episode 92 of the It Will Come show. And today we're going to be looking at Elon Musk, the problem with stuff, and what really matters. So let's dive straight into it. So if you were sort of paying attention to the interwebs, and if you're a fan of Elon Musk, then you might have heard about part 2 of his interview with Joe Rogan. And as per usual, always really interesting hearing Elon Musk on the Joe Rogan show. And so he did sort of touch on a few things, namely, the one that I'm kind of going to touch on is just to do with sort of what's happening in the United States, traditional currencies, and the making of stuff. So if you haven't yet had a chance to listen to the interview between Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, highly recommend you just Google it and check it out. But I've highlighted a few things here. Elon Musk says, this notion, though, that you can just sort of send checks out to everybody and things will be fine is not true. And what he's talking about here is the stimulus packages that the United States is releasing in almost every other country in the world. It's not that it's not justified. Like, we completely understand why it's happening right now. It's just a very slippery slope for the future. Many countries are in major debt already. And what's essentially happening now is that we're seeing just how much control and power is present with a lot of Federal Reserve, central banks, etc. And what really happens, So essentially, if there's a problem, if there's no money, it just gets printed into existence. And look, there's nothing shady about it anymore because it's out in the open. There was a recent video with the chairman of the Federal Reserve, and the interviewer said, "So does that mean that you essentially just print money when it's needed?" And he said, "Yeah." So there doesn't really need to be any conspiracies around it anymore. It is what it is, and now we have to figure out how we're going to deal with all this. So the issue is that a lot of people are receiving these paychecks right from governments, and why this is not going to help much is because you have the added issue of coronavirus, which is changing consumer behavior. It's changing people's habits, right? So even if you send money out to folks, they might not necessarily buy things with it because everybody's sort of in a bit of a panic phase and becoming a lot more conservative. They might just save it, which means there's nothing to stimulate the economy. These stimulus packages was sort of enabled, right, to get people to put money back into the system, into the economy, so that things would keep flowing and running, right? But unfortunately, that is not happening, or may not happen. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be any economic activity, because a lot of people are still doing, buying things online, still need to get food and groceries, etc. But what Elon Musk is saying, right, is the government cannot logically sustain its money printing efforts. Yes, it is going to have long-term ramifications. And he said, if you don't make stuff, there is no stuff. You can't just legislate money and solve these things. So exactly here, right, if we look at sort of society, there are definitely a lot more consumers than there are producers or creators. And however, though, if you don't have the creators or producers creating, then the whole economic system from which we have created ceases to be, right? And we're starting to see that, and that's why we're experiencing the collapse that is happening right now. Now, in this particular article, they're making a case for Bitcoin, of course, and if you've been watching my show, I've been in this space since 2013, but I won't go too much into the Bitcoin side. But essentially, we're seeing right now sort of a change of the traditional money system, right, and a shift in power. And so it's important for you to just take notice of that. There's definitely some things happening between China and the U.S. right now. People are talking about a Cold War, which could potentially turn into a hot one, depending on how things go. There was a article which I think I shared in a previous episode about Ray Dalio, looking at the last 500 years and showing us the cycles that many empires go through. And right now we're at a part of the cycle whereby we've gone through the sort of the final financial collapse, and the stimulus printing of money, and usually what happens after that are riots and revolts, right? And then it might happen with food, and we're actually already seeing this in many countries around the world. So these are signals, but also what it means is that there will be a new world order. Again, this just means like essentially new superpowers might start to emerge. Whether that's the United States or not, who knows? Uh, but all empires go through these sort of ups and downs, these cycles, and so it's very just very interesting to see. Now, I put this here as well. Um, I'm I'm afraid the news isn't good. World has it that consumers are starting to find out what actually matters, right? And this is more in relation to my previous episode actually. Um, how will you measure your life? If you haven't checked this one out, just go to my channel at Siosism on YouTube, and that one was really more a reflection of the last week that I took off, and how when you are kind of forced to stay at home, forced to save up, and you take away all the stuff actually. So even though Elon Musk is making a case for making more stuff, think about that. What the hell are we doing? Are we just making more stuff for the sake of it? Have we forgotten what's truly important? I mean, these are the questions that I think a lot of people are asking themselves during this time. And I, for one, definitely have uh, been asking myself those questions. For me, I realize that more than anything else, I do half the things that I do for the people around me. And of course, you know, there are many things we do selfishly for ourselves, whether that's to feel important or to feel acknowledged or recognized or what have you. Like a lot of these things were highlighted, you know. And however, I think what was really interesting in yesterday's episode, I was talking about this movie, It's a Wonderful Life, which took place actually during the Depression era. And so it's very interesting to see what happened, which I think is going to be happening again now, almost 100 years later, is that, uh, the main protagonist of that film, um, It's a Beautiful Life, or It's a Wonderful Life, realized that, it wasn't the money, it wasn't the business that was the most important thing. It was the community, the people, right, that made him truly rich. And everybody has their own sort of measure for success. But for me, thinking about how we just create stuff for the sake of, to keep ourselves busy, it can be kind of sad if you look back at it, right? And we create all of these. We say we create all these efficiencies, right, and try to make ourselves more productive to ideally give ourselves more freedom and leisure, etc. But are we utilizing that? I mean, the other side to that coin is that, of course, people can feel uh, lacking purpose, right, if there's nothing to do or strive for. So I don't think that'll ever go away. But we really do have to figure out a way to harmonize the need for leisure, rest, etc., with what is productive, right, or makes us feel like we're moving towards something. Because progress is just second nature to us, right? We always want to be sort of moving, right? A lack of movement often spells death. And so, this, I think it was just really interesting to sort of hear, like when I heard Elon Musk say, like, well, if we don't make more stuff, there is no stuff. And it's true, but it's also sad that, like, this is how we look at it, right? It's just stuff. And so, what is really important? What are we creating, really? Um, and then finally, I'm sharing this article here from this new journal that I found called the New Atlantis. And if you've been watching, our sponsors Fire are sitting at the edge, or sitting as a bridge between communities and technology. And so this particular journal is looking at technology and society, sort of, in my opinion, similar traits or similar aspects, people and technology. And essentially, this article was just looking at how many of our businesses, our systems, our infrastructures were set up for an analog city, not necessarily a digital one. And so, there's talk about 5G coming in as well. And I think, the future city, which will be increasingly digital or hybrid, right? We're starting to see right now, as coronavirus is, making its way around the world and changing so many behaviors, just how ill prepared we are for some of these things that are emerging. And so in the future, I think we will start to see, just more systems, and Bitcoin definitely inserts itself as sort of a money system that is built for a digital era, a digital age. We are properly moving into an information age now. So we are coming out of that industrial age, and we've been in transition into an information age for a good couple decades now. And so this is definitely all happening. I will include the links in the show notes so you can have a read. But it is sort of connected to this stuff business that we really need to have a think about things that, again, matter. We need to have a think about what a future world looks like, especially after this point in time, because we're seeing really our saving grace has been like the online world, right? Imagine if we were all forced to stay at home and we had no TVs, we had no internet, etc. We wouldn't be able to still connect with many of our friends and families around the world, right? We wouldn't still be able to operate our businesses, etc. And maybe then you might realize even more so how important your friends and families are. Or you might feel very isolated if you're far away from them. Because I know for me, being away from most of my family in another country and not being able to have that connection, via Zoom or any of these digital means, it would be very different. I think the experience would be very different. And so, with that, I hope you have a think about this stuff business. And if you've seen the interview, would love for your own thoughts or comments around what your take is on the creation of stuff. What really matters to you in currently, and then also moving out of COVID-19. What actually matters to you? And with that, as always, remember, through patience and persistence, it will come.
The eyes may be able to see, but without a heart.